We're taking a few minutes to review the application of positive supports in your home. The purpose of today's time together is to think a little more deeply on how we can improve the quality of life for everyone in the home. Your collaboration together each month is very important. At the heart of positive supports is collaboration and discovery. Successful application of positive supports asks all of us to think more deeply about the person. What is their story? What do they desire? Can they build a presence in the community that is enduring and meaningful? Home is where this begins, as it does for all of us. We all want many of the same things for ourselves. However, as care providers and those of us supporting you, it is the first step to ask questions of ourselves as we invite and support the individual we are welcoming into our home. How does my home reflect the values of Nonotuck, and in doing so better meet the needs of the people I support? What have I already learned about the person while living with them? Today, we'll be looking at these ideas more broadly and with some examples to help us along the way. In the coming month, you will have the opportunity to self-assess your home and begin the process of developing personalized supports unique to the person that you are supporting in your home. So what are these values that I speak of? In looking over these core Nonotuck values, you would notice that they describe a type of generosity of effort and openness to approach. Being a care provider is a teaching opportunity. Teachers are able to connect in ways that are reliably encouraging and help guide learning. However, the very best teachers learn more and more about the other person. The deeply rewarding outcome is the development of an enduring relationship that is characterized by an emerging trust and interpersonal bond. The shared living model is based on this belief. So therefore, our main purpose in designing and developing healthy and responsive environments is to help each person be able to live happy and satisfying lives. The goal that accompanies that, and the primary goal, is to help people get into their own lives of their own choosing. Hopefully, you took the time to read the brief article, The Importance of Environment, that was included in your pre-session packet. If not, please do take the time after we are done here. You will find it brief and thought-provoking. It certainly influenced me. Many of the people we serve have survived toxic environments. In years past, it was the institutions that were being closed. It may now be a nursing home where someone has languished for far too long. It may even be a family system where punishment and emotional turmoil was a daily occurrence. Most everyone has also been exposed to tolerated environments. These are typically rural-driven settings, public or residential school or group homes, where compliance was the goal. Often day programs can fall into this category, which can and often does lead to transition to home problems and the seemingly reoccurring van issues. The shared living model, your home, is asking that we partner with you to design environments that are supportive in nature. So what are the general qualities of a supportive home? These values that we talked about earlier can be also described as outcomes, which are goals in and of themselves. Comfort certainly means meeting both the sensory and physical needs of the person. It also means the pace of life that allows for the gift of time when required. It asks that routines be self-selected where possible and well understood. It allows for physical privacy, but also privacy of thought. It means that there is certainty of who will be home, and any unexpected changes are prepared for in advance. It means the safety of home when having a bad day and the freedom to be out of sorts for a short time. Competency means being engaged in ways that are stimulating. It means being treated as a lifelong adult learner. It means being gently challenged to try the next thing in learning, a new skill, or the generosity of crafting an accommodation that allows them to do as much as they can for themselves. It means we respect their personal agency and not contribute to learned helplessness. More on that later. Connections are the relationships in the home, extended family, with neighbors, and the larger community. It means being a regular at the local diner and they're being known by name and how they like their eggs. It is also keeping them safe from unhealthy social media exposure and guiding them away from false friendships and sadly the inevitable exposure to financial fraud. The DDS regulations speak about this in the context or with the labeling of universal support. So let's start there. Universal supports are always in place and available, but universal supports are also designed for the individual as a universe of one. Also, universal supports are selected or can be selected within a wellness framework and mirror the supports that we all can recognize in our own lives. The intimacy of the shared living model and the shared living home allows for a more individualized level of support. We are seeing each individual as a universe of one, and the goal is to design personalized supports. We all can easily identify what we need in our own life, and we spend a great deal of time securing and maintaining our own level of personalized supports. We then can think of these supports as a common ground strategy. What makes sense for us can make sense for someone else. Ideas that work for us in our own lives may very well be a guide or a template as to how to build a highly supportive home environment for the person who is emerging from toxic or tolerated spaces. These are not easy questions, and they cover a wide range of differing types of support or areas of need. But they are intended to be returned to quite frequently as we seek to build a set of personalized supports that over time can become integrated into home life, allowing for comfort, competency, and the connection to be realized as we spoke earlier at an earlier slide. You will see in your pre-session packet a treatment of how a care provider can identify and begin to create personalized supports. Your self-assessment in the coming months will be asking you to think more deeply about these areas and indeed returning to some of these questions. Just to touch on this briefly, many, if not most, of the people we support do not have a wellness profile that benefits them. Trauma history, personal levels of poverty, and a disconnected social history all contribute to both poor health and mental health profiles. The promise of designing personalized supports using wellness as a template does stimulate some creativity and the recognition that what works for us will also be beneficial to the people that we support. Again, a common ground shared sensibility, us and them, us with them. Here's an example of some personalized supports for someone who I'm calling Liz for the purposes of this PowerPoint. She had come into shared living from her family and spent time in a day program. Both tolerated situations. Her challenges were mostly transition stress. She would find something negative in most social situations and was very quick to get upset. Notice that none of the suggestions are clinical in design or application. Working collaboratively with the care provider and the care manager who knew her best, we were able to identify various supports drawn from communication ideas, empathizing with their upset when it occurred, and providing space and privacy when needed. Finally, after a time, the sensory piece was better understood as well, and that was also made a contribution to her being comfortable in her own home. Difficulties still arose from time to time, but they were much better understood, and Liz was able to find stability in her home life. Let me touch on a few basic concepts here before we go any further. Being positive is a powerful tool for people who are experiencing negativity. It takes a 3-to-1 ratio of positives and negative experiences to build an optimistic outlook. However, being positive does not just mean being nice or looking the other way when a difficulty arises. The care provider and the individual are in a real relationship, and often we need to give disconfirming feedback, set a limit, or simply not know what to do for a time. It is at these moments that collaboration and a return to asking the basic questions that you saw earlier leads to better outcomes. One of the most overlooked obstacles is the experience of learned helplessness that is chronic in the IDD population. We also all maybe experienced a version of this through COVID. Learned helplessness can be best understood as a condition in which a person has a sense of powerlessness in a traumatic event or persistent failure to succeed. From a traumatic event or persistent failure to succeed. It is thought to be one of the underlying causes of depression. Depression is chronic in this population, of course, as most of you probably already know. In the simplest of terms, people experiencing learned helplessness do not believe that any action they take will make a difference. They are stuck and simply give up when they experience any lack of success. For people who have experienced toxic environments and are lost in this phenomenon, this does require at times clinical collaboration in the initial stages before identified personalized supports can be cultivated and applied. Lastly, in terms of larger concepts that I think are important to understand or have an appreciation for, is the dichotomy between proactive and reactive. Universal supports are provided proactively. They are provided with generosity and as needed. Finally, they are seen as preventative in their application. The goal is cooperation. For people who have been in toxic or tolerated environments, they often have been expected to be compliant and follow rules. In shared living, some compliance is needed, of course, but the rules give way to agreements. Shared experience leads to enhanced communication and better at-home living patterns. Finally, many people we support have very limited, meaningful experience with making choices. It can be powerful to provide choice at a high frequency. In doing so, you are strengthening their own sense of personal autonomy and agency. This is an aspect of teaching that is quite often overlooked in the adult population that we support. Think of how many choices we all make every single day, and then compare that to the typical pattern of daily life that sees so many people with IDD moving through unchanging patterns in their own lives. Embracing choice, even in the simplest of situations, can be quite liberating for both the person as well as the care provider. Life becomes less routine and more dynamic. So there are times when distress can present itself and additional thinking and support may be needed. So here we're adding the word behavior to positive support, positive behavioral support. So we'll be switching our thinking to that for a few more minutes here. Many times challenging behavior can be due to physical distress, and consulting with their doctor or Nonotuck nurse is the first course of action and can often and does alleviate the problem. Other times, heightened stress can be due to a whole host of issues that need some exploration. This is the time when collaboration with the care manager and assigned clinician is the first step in gaining a better understanding. Of course, all identified personalized supports are maintained during difficult times. Here is a representation of all the common stressors that human beings can experience. They represent the wide range of emotions and mental health states that could benefit from person-centered problem solving. Maybe it's a context that is driving the challenging behavior, van travel. Maybe it's a disappointment such as a failed family plan that leads to upset. Or maybe it's the inability of the person to identify their own emotions and their words simply fail them. In such cases, conferring with the team is the first step. It's hard to be in the current culture and not hear a lot about trauma or trauma-informed care. This certainly is one of the big contributors to enlightened support of people that have such type of histories. You certainly have been made aware of trauma-informed care and how important it is to approach people who have significant trauma histories with empathy and care. Here are the essential tools we have as care providers and supporting professionals. I believe in reading through them, you will see the values and approaches and personalized supports as being consistent with these support elements presented here on the slide. This image appeals to me because I think it is so true that stress comes and goes. Stress sometimes doesn't result in a very deep groove, like putting your finger in the sand, and something can come by to make it go away. And so this personalized supports are represented by the ocean water. So I thought this was a nice image to sort of focus in on a little bit about how stress can lead to distress. And so we want to be real fully committed to reducing stress, and that's where the personalized supports come on in. But when those supports flag or aren't sufficient and distress emerges, that's when turning to collaboration with your care manager, that's when turning to consulting with the clinician, consulting to the team is really primarily important. So here are some primary actions to relieve distress, and anticipating situations that will be challenging and assisting the person to cope or to respond in a calm way. Sometimes this requires some re-engineering, some pre-teaching, for example. Filling up the person's life with opportunities such as valued work, enjoyable physical exercise, and preferred recreational activities. Or modifying the environment itself to remove stressors such as irritating noise, light, or cold air. So here's another individual, John. John had a background where he had lived in a state mental health hospital, so a very toxic environments. He had to deal with years of isolation and punishment, and as a result was very aggressive towards others. He had also been subject to a high level of psychotropic medication that certainly took its toll on his language and ability to respond well to others. You can see here that his primary challenge is being startled or being overly stimulated. Here again, the personalized support provided to John came from the observations of the care provider. The clinician was helpful in recognizing their importance, but without care provider and care manager insight, this extremely helpful list of ideas may not have been discovered. I want to point out to you that one of the ideas here needs some additional context. The care provider had mentioned that John likes to have a daily prayer, and I just thought that meant a Hail Mary or an Our Father. But she corrected me, took the time to correct me, and said it was very important that John actually say a prayer that had content specific to the upcoming day. I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't listened to the care provider at that moment. And her additional detail was extremely important, understanding who John was and how he was doing his best to cope in the day that he was in. So there is another environment. We talked about toxic, we talked about tolerated, we talked about supportive, and supportive environments do meet the needs of most of the people that we support. However, there are individuals who require a fourth type of environment, which is called the healing environment. This requires a great deal of collaboration with the team and requires some additional supports beyond the at the ready and always available personalized supports that we've spent so much time talking about today. Key here for some emphasis. In a healing environment, the quality of your engagement with the person is paramount. That the well-being of the person is the maintained goal. That safety for all is the immediate goal and is critically important, particularly at the most challenging of moments, where the person can return to a positive baseline and begin to take safe risks. In healing environments where personalized supports can be re-examined and enhanced as needed. The last person we'll be speaking about today is Helen. Helen had been in a state institution and was in a day program that was toxic as well. She wasn't in a shared living home, but a group home. The ideas were generated for Helen were primarily designed around transition stress and recognizing that bringing home her awful emotional day was the challenge. Primary here was to give her time and space. We had to be patient. She also needed to slowly build up to a social connection after a day of extreme social isolation. Here, the clinician needed to work a little harder at generating the ideas, but once adopted by house staff, the issues during transition diminished. Just a word on clinical services with Nonotuck. Each person we serve has an assigned clinician. That does not mean that we have intimate knowledge of each person on our caseload, but we are readily available to learn more about each person as needed. Consultation is the primary methodology and is readily available to each team member, care manager, care provider, program director, nurse as needed. Development of therapeutic approaches versus therapy. It's important to understand that we as clinicians are not therapists. We're not delivering therapy services, but we are hopefully contributing to a therapeutic environment. So what we do is therapeutic. Development of medication treatment plans and the analysis of appropriate data is primary and sole responsibility of the clinician. Making connections with community mental health resources is another key feature of what we are hope to support people. I also want to point out that your home is also in the community, and so it is a community mental health resource in and of itself. And finally, documenting positive supports, positive behavioral support needs for the EDS regulations. So that concludes this primer on personalized supports. If you have not gone through the pre-session packet, please do so. It's not lengthy. It was chosen with some intentionality, so it was pretty user-friendly for all of you. And then following in the coming months, you'll be given a self-assessment tool that you'll be asked to begin to sort of think more deeply about your home. So thank you very much for the time. I would encourage both the care manager and you to have a conversation when this is over, just to collect some early impressions. One of the primary goals of speaking to you today was to really prime the pump on you and your care manager being able to have conversations that are in this area of positive supports. So thank you very much.